Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Trade Trade Group, and it is Wednesday, April 27th. Wow, a lot of earnings reports. That is the major theme that we have this week. Of course, the Fed is in their quiet period. We won't hear from them until next week. That's Wednesday is the big FOMC report. But this week is all about earnings. By the way, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Everything that we're talking about is for information purposes only. But yes, a lot of earnings reports. Some of the bigger names are reported after the close yesterday as well, and we'll get more reports tomorrow after the close. Keep in mind, I think this is the busiest week for earnings, so that's why I'm referencing it that much. In regards to this today's price action, this continues to be more of the same. It's a fast market. You'll look 1 hour, the Qs could be up 1%. Next hour, they could be down 0.5%. Markets are just moving very quickly, choppy, still not seeing buyers really, the institutional buyers really kind of come in and really want to buy the dip. However, I feel like we're kind of getting further to the end of this episode of volatility, and you could call that the volatility of 2022. And the reason why I say that is if you go through and if you look through charts, and if you look at, particularly the growth names, which, I haven't really, I've tried a couple times this year participating in some of the growth names as they, try to break out. And, a lot of that has been unsuccessful, but for the most part, I've been trading just, different areas of the market this year. But that said, if I spent some time earlier in this week just going through and just browsing, browsing through chart after chart of growth names, and I just can't believe some of these names, have gone down, this far. And it's and I'm not calling a bottom in any of these names or anything like that, but I think at some point the damage will be inflicted enough on these names. Where we are in that process, I don't know for sure. I think that we're getting to closer to the end of this. And I think what you're going to find, and, I kind of have a little bit more of an optimistic tone today, is that, once we do get through this earnings season, you are going to find names that could be the potential leaders for the next quarter, right? That's always the situation with earnings season, is you will get some new market leaders, some names to participate in, and we'll see how that goes as we get a little bit closer. Maybe out of this week of earnings, maybe even out of next week of earnings. A couple of things that are pretty interesting. Facebook. I find this interesting. Number one, Facebook has come down, like, I think enough, in terms of a valuation perspective, in terms of sentiment, but they didn't come out with they didn't come out with good earnings. And I'm not an expert on the numbers and so forth and breaking down, every little, line segment of, earnings that come out. But, they had their first quarter earnings slip. User growth was up. Perhaps maybe that's why it's up a little bit. Slowest revenue since IPO. But it's just the fact that perhaps the bad news is priced in based on where the stock is trading up to 200. Where does that put us on the daily chart? And this is not a name that I really trade much, but you could see this name has gotten beaten up. You could see that red line version point of control being taken out. There's another one that lives lower, but a move back up to 200. Am I buying Facebook? No, I really don't like the company. That's my personal preference. Maybe some other people really like Facebook and, like Meta. I don't. It's not going to be a name that I really get involved in. But just looking at the price action and just saying, hey, well, maybe there was enough of downside baked into this stock. Again, look at the valuation too. I think that has also something to do with it. And if we bring that up just so that you could see exactly what I'm referring to, the PE is a 13, right? So it's now like, it has come down enough so that it's fairly valued. And I think that's what we want to see more of these companies. Another one that I find interesting, I did not play this name because I just view that this market action is too difficult. But if you look at ServiceNow on the weekly chart, right, this came into 466. I did think that this was a good opportunity. And if you look at service now. And again, what I really, take a look at during earnings season is how a company, what the history of how a company reports. Now they're still expensive too. That's another reason why I didn't really want to take a shot at these guys. 380 PE, estimated PE for December is a 63. That's still pretty hot, but I think you'll see what I mean here once we get to the right column over here, the price action after earnings. This to me is what you want to see if you're playing a name on the long side for earnings. You want to see that a company knows what they're doing in terms of setting expectations. Perhaps some of that is the earnings call as well, right? It's not by accident, in my opinion, that you have some companies like this, right, who are executing and setting expectations very well versus my example for Netflix, right? What does that tell you, right? And of course, the last 2 quarters have been very dramatic, but it has a history of missing, right? So that should tell you enough, right? And to me, it's not one of those situations where you want to be a contrarian. It's a situation where you want to look to see if the company knows what the hell they're doing, right? And it looks like that's another example. Now, again, even though I see service now up and it looks like they beat earnings, keep in mind, just like we talk about the 80% rule when we talk about the technicals and value areas, right? This is not 100% guarantee that they were going to go up. There are quarters, they had one quarter about a year ago where they missed and went down 9%. So nothing is 100%. Nothing is 100% in trading, right? I think everybody knows that by now, especially if you've been watching my videos for now. We talk about probabilities and we talk about risk to return, right, in different setups, but it looks like that's going to hold. Let's go back. Let's talk a little bit about the name that reported last night, Google, right? This is also a level that is going to have to be held. I was talking about this because again, I'm just spending a little bit more time on earnings names because that's the topic of this week. But I would like to take a shot in my long-term account on Google, but here's what I find funny in this market, and I went over this a little bit earlier in the day, right? If I take a shot, even in one of my longer term geared accounts, such as my IRA, right? If I bought Google, I would still have a stop price on it, right? Which would be 22.59, right? I see too many people who buy something and they're like, oh, it's okay, it's in my long-term account. Does that mean that you want to lose money in your long-term account? No, I get it. And that's why I'm on the weekly chart here in Google, right? Because you should be looking longer term, or a little bit longer term if you're looking at the weekly chart. But that doesn't mean that I want to just sock it away in my account and forget about it. I think that there's too many investors right now that are saying, oh, this is a great buying opportunity, for the long term. I'm going to go ahead and buy some, and and then if it doesn't go right, they say, well, that's okay. I've got 3 years or 5 years, right? But you don't want to lose money for 3 or 5 years. So even if I did buy Google, right, because I don't like the setup on the daily chart, on the weekly chart, on the longer term chart, this would be a good place for Google to hold. But if it breaks 22.59, I don't care what type of account it's in, I'm going to get out of it because you should have a stop price, right? Because if it breaks that, right, I'm not, the last thing that you want to do is be like, in my opinion is, oh, the stock's at 1700. Oh, that's okay. It's a long-term account. Your money is your money. There's too much emphasis, I think, on some of younger traders thinking, oh, well, I didn't sell it yet, so it's not a loss. It's a loss. So in any event, that's a level to trade against, even if in your long-term account. And again, if it doesn't hold that level that I just mentioned, then possibly the stock goes down to here, right? Because it does look awfully broken on the daily chart, and it looks like, in my opinion, that it could take some while. It could take a while for this name to heal, right? It is not even done finished going down, considering what it's done this week. All right, guys, but just a thought, and just a thought about this. What I keep hearing about is like, oh, I'm putting it into the long-term account. I've got a 3-year time horizon. I've got a 5-year time horizon. The last thing that you want to do is, in my opinion, is lose money for 3 years, 4 years, 1 year, 5 year. You want to be making money in your account, right? So have a stop price. Have a place where if it goes wrong, you know how to get out. right? You could always get back into the stock. People think that they're going to miss something. For example, right, let's go back to Facebook just for a second, right? This Facebook has gone down from 370 to 174. Do you really care about 25 points at this point, right? What are you looking for in this stock? For me, I don't know if I would really care too much about the 25 points, right? Unless I was just day trading it and I bought it today and sold it at 200. Hey, that's a great trade, right? But there's too many people, I think, that think that they're going to miss something, right? What do you think Tesla, excuse me, what do you think, not Tesla, Tesla we could also get to. But what do you think this company is going to do at this point going forward? Do you think it's going to recover all its gains? So it's something to think about. And again, a trade is a trade. I understand the expectations were very low. And if you made some money on this name today, great. You might think about your exit plan as well. Always, right? Whenever you get into a trade, think about the exit plan to the downside if it doesn't work out, and the exit plan on the upside as well. All right. What else? I mentioned Tesla. Tesla, unfortunately, is kind of in the penalty box at this point because of this deal with Twitter. It's taking a back seat, and some investors don't want that. So it is now back checking this top of value. So I would pay attention to this 878 level to see if this is going to hold. A couple other things that I thought were interesting today. Texas Instruments, right? They also reported a not so good quarter, right? And they actually ended up positive for the session. So again, this is a little bit of baby steps, right? We want to start seeing, bad news sort of priced into the market. I don't know what point we are, if that's completely there, but I think we're starting to make, some first steps in terms of having a bad quarter, having bad news as Texas Instruments, and the stock actually went up. That is a very good thing to see when you report bad news and the stock actually shakes it off and goes up. All right. So I didn't go over the indices. I usually spend a little bit more time on them, but we've got so many names reporting that, that may end up be the driver of, some single stock performance. For now, the S&P did hold the bottom of value. So that's a good thing. The 80% rule is complete, right? And we're going to have a new valuary coming up in just a couple of days. The end of month is on Friday, right? That's the last trading day of the month. By the way, I wanted to talk about this too. Let me just finish up the technicals here. But this was a small move to the upside comparatively to what we've seen over the last week. I would really like to see us get back above the 5-period moving average. Remember, we saw a similar move like this just a couple days ago, and then we washed out below. So 41.48 is what I want to see hold, and then a bigger bounce begin to happen from there. Nasdaq, we did, Nasdaq 100, we did take out that downside VPOC, which I think is a good thing. Now we're kind of stuck between here and the bottom of value. So we'll see if we can rally from there too. Again, I would say, let's see if we can hold this 12,860. Last thing I'll say is that as we get to the end of this month, right, I think the S&P is down around 8%, something like that for the month. And I think if you're faring okay in this market, right, even more so, obviously, if you're being able to make some money, shorting some things as things have really kind of fallen. But I think if you're hanging in there for this month, give yourself a pat on the back, right? It's not easy. I went through this yesterday, but let me just do it one more time. All right, there we go. Yes, down 7.6% is S&P for the month. Right. So if you are managing through this, right, with the Qs down 12.6% for the month, right, you're doing a great job and you're staying nimble, right, which is kind of how I have been trying to basically just get through this price action. And, I'm about flat for the month, which I consider a win, right? If you would have told me in the beginning of the month that the Qs were going to be down over 12% for the month, right? And if you would have said, hey, what do you think you're going to do that month, right? And if somebody would have said, hey, would you be happy with flat? I probably would say yes. So I'm happy to, even possibly with 2 days left in the month, might be able to squeak out a gain this month. That's great. And then we can you can live to fight for another day when there's going to be some better price action. All right, guys, that's it for today. Have a great night. Also, perhaps, and I'll talk more. It's Wednesday. You'll hear me talk more about this, but perhaps we might see some new money being put to work next week, maybe after the Fed meeting. All right, guys, depending on what kind of guidance they give us. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.